We're now starting part 2 of the implicit derivatives video homework guide, and in this video we will start off with example 3, question number 1. And for example number 3, I need to find the slope of the tangent to each curve at the given point. So I'm just looking for the value of the slope. I'm not looking for the equation of the tangent line, and we're given an x value of 2 and a y value of 1, and we need to use that particular point when finding the slope. Okay, so let's go ahead and find the derivative here. In this first term, I have to use the product rule there. So the derivative of x squared is going to be 2x. 2x times y. And then the product rule states that I need to add the first term times the derivative of the second term, which is going to be y prime. And then there's a minus x cubed. So the derivative of x cubed is 3x squared minus, and then the derivative of 4y cubed is going to be, well, 4 times 3 is 12, so 12 y squared. And the chain rule states that I need to take the derivative of y, which is going to be y prime. And then the derivative of 8 is 0, and the right hand side, the derivative of 0 is 0. Okay, now before you isolate for y prime like we did in previous problems, my recommendation is you take your coordinate, which is 2 comma 1. So here's my 2 and there's my 1. And anytime you have your x values, you would change all those x values with 2. And anytime you have, just change the y to a yellow color here. And anytime you have a y, I would change the y's to 1, and then I would isolate for y prime afterwards. So if I do that correctly here, that'll be 2 times, well, the x value is 2, so it'll be 2 times 2, and the y value is 1, plus the x value here is 2, so it'll be 2 squared times y prime. And then minus 3 times 2 squared minus 12 times 1 squared times y prime equals to 0. And then we can just go ahead and evaluate the numbers here. So 2 times 2 times 1 is going to be 4. Whoops. All right, so it's 4 plus 4, that's 2 squared is 4, so 4y prime minus, well, this is going to be 4 and that's going to be 3, so 4 times 3 is going to be 12, minus, well, this is going to be 12 times 1, so 12 times 1 is 12, and then y prime equals to 0. Let me just erase this part right here, and let's go ahead and continue collecting like terms here. So there's a 4 here and a negative 12. 4 minus 12 is going to be negative 8. And then we have 4y prime minus 12y prime. So 4 minus 12 is going to be negative 8y prime. Sorry, my pen is a little bit slow here reacting here. Equals to 0. And then I can take my negative 8y prime and move it to the other side. And if I move that to the other side, it becomes 8y prime. And then I have just a negative 8 on the left-hand side. And then I can finish off the problem by dividing both sides of the equation by 8. And the 8's will cancel off. And now I'm given y prime equals to negative 1. So negative 1 is my final answer for this problem here. Okay, that's it for that particular question. The derivative value is negative 1. All right, let's move on to question number 3 now. All right, so I have another question where I need to find the slope of the tangent at the point 2 comma 2. So this is my x value and this is my y value. And for this particular problem, before we take the derivative, I see that we have these radical signs here, and with most of these radicals in this chapter, we need to convert them into powers. So this would be 4x minus y squared to the power of 1/2 minus 4 times xy to the power of 1/2 equals to negative 6. Right, now that we've written the radicals into powers, we can go ahead and take the derivative using the power rule, and then we'll have to use the chain rule for this particular problem here. So using the power rule, the 1/2 would come out in front. So my next line will be my derivative step. So this will be 1/2 bracket. Just one sec. Seems like my pen's not picking up here, so I just need to move and switch gears here. Just one sec. So turn that off. This will be 4x minus y squared. So if I minus 2 out of 2 on the power here, this would be negative 1/2. And then the chain rule states that I need to go ahead and take the derivative of this inside term here. So I'll take the derivative of that in blue now. So the derivative of that would be 4 minus 2y times y prime, and then close the bracket there. Okay, then let's move on to the next term, so minus. And then if I go on to the 4 bracket xy to the power 1/2, the 1/2 would times with the 4, so 4 times 1/2 would be 2. So 2 times xy to the power of negative 1/2, because I need to subtract 1 on this power there. And then I need to take the derivative of the inside expression, and the inside expression here is just xy, so more work to do. This is going to be the product rule now. So the derivative of the first term, which is x, will be 1, so 1 times y, plus the first term times the derivative of the second term, which will be y prime, and then I would close the bracket, and then that would be my overall derivative there. Okay, so that's a very long line, and let's go ahead and change all this back into a radical here. So this expression right here at the beginning, that's going to be 1 over the square root of 4x minus y squared, and then this 2 here would just tag along in the front, and this part here, which I'll underline in green, we'll just multiply this on the numerator here. So this is 4 minus 2y times y prime, close the bracket. And then this part here in blue, that's all being raised to the power of negative 1/2. So that's going to be minus root xy. And then this 2 here, we'll just park that at the front there. And then we can just tag along the rest of the product rule here, which was y plus x times y prime. And then, sorry, one more thing is the derivative of 6 here, the derivative of 6 there is going to be 0. Okay, so I forgot that last step there. So there it is, the derivative of negative 6 is being 0. Okay, let's go back to the beginning of the problem here. We were asked to find the slope of the tangent, and the point that we're given is 2, 2. So anytime I see an x variable or a y variable, those guys will now change into 2 and 2. All right, so if I look at this particular line now, let me go ahead and highlight all the x's and y's. So here's an x, there's a y, there's a y, there's an x, there's a y, there's a y, there's an x. We're going to change all those values there with 2, and then hopefully we can get to a better answer here. So this is 1 divided by 2 times. All right, so if I plug in a 2 for this x here, that'll be 4 times 2, which is going to be 8, minus, if I plug a 2 in for this y, that'll be 2 squared, which is 4, times 4 minus, and if I plug in a 2 here, that'll be 2 times 2, which is 4, so 4 times y prime, close the bracket, minus 2 over. Now, if the x's and y's are substituted with 2 and 2, 2 times 2 is going to be 4, bracket, this y will change into a 2, plus this x will change into a 2, so 2 times y prime equals to 0. All right, so now we've got to start computing some of this. 8 minus 4 is 4, and the square root of 4 is 2, and 2 times 2 is going to be 4. So this whole fraction is going to be just 1 divided by 4. So 1 divided by 4 times, this is going to be 4 minus 4y prime minus, well, 2 divided by the square root of 4 is going to be 2 divided by 2, which will be 1, times 2 plus 2y prime, close bracket, equals to 0. Okay, so we're slowly getting there. There's a few more algebraic steps here. So if I distribute the 1/4 into the brackets here, I will get 1 minus 4, sorry, made a mistake. There's actually 1 minus y prime. So 1 minus 1 prime. And then if I distribute this minus 1 into these brackets, that will be negative 2 minus 2y prime equals to 0. And slowly we are getting to the final result here, and now I need to collect like terms. So 1 minus 2 is going to be, sorry, 1 minus 2 is going to be negative 1. And then if I take these guys, my y prime expressions, that would be negative 3y prime equals to 0. And then we're almost done here. I'm going to take my y prime term here and move it to the other side. That's going to be 3y prime equals to negative 1. And then finally I can divide both sides of the equation by 3. Those 3's will cancel, and y prime equals to negative 1/3. Alright, so quite a bit of work, and but we were able to get to the final answer eventually. Alright, I'm going to pause the video and then we'll move on to example number 4 in a bit. I'm now starting question number 4, and question 4 is another slope of the tangent at this particular given point, which is 4, 2. So this is my x value here, which is 4, and this is my y value of 2. Alright, let's go ahead and take its derivative now. Actually, sorry, before we take its derivative, let's rewrite this so that the radical is written in terms of a power. So this is y squared, bracket, y minus 1 to the power of 1/2. Sorry, my pen's not working here, 1/2. Okay, let's go ahead and start taking some derivatives now. So I need my blue marker here. Okay, so the derivative of x is going to be 1. And the derivative of y squared is going to be 2y times y prime. And then the chain rule states that I need to, the product rule states that I need to write out the second term as is. So this will be y minus 1 to the power of 1/2. And then the product rule states that I need to add that to the first term, which was y squared. And then I would take the derivative of the second term here. So I need to take the derivative of this expression here in red. So the 1/2 would come out in front. And then it would be y minus 1 to the power of negative 1/2. And then the chain rule states that I need to take the derivative of this inside guy. And the inside there is just y minus 1. So that's going to be y prime. Okay, I'm going to underline. So I'm going to delete, erase that part there. And before we start substituting the values for y in this case, let's go ahead and clean this up here. So I'm going to clean this up by changing all the radicals back into powers. So this part right here would be 1 over the square root of y minus 1 plus y squared times this part right here would be 1 over the square root of y minus 1, and then there's a 2 here, and that 2 would be parked outside there, and then I have a y prime at the very end there. So I think it definitely helps to kind of change all the powers back into radicals, and then we can go ahead and plug in our values for y in this case. So if I go back to the original problem here, just in the original problem, the y value has a value of 2. So anytime I see a y in my problem now, I'm going to replace all the y's with 2 now. So here's a y, there's a y, there's a y, there's a y. All those y's will be replaced with the value of 2. Alright, so let's do that in my next step. So now I have 1 equals to 2 times. I'll put a red 2 here, and then I'll use a y prime times 1 over the square root of 2 minus 1 plus, this will be 2 squared over here times 1 over the square root of 2 minus 1, and then the green 2 would still tag around, and then the y prime would be at the very end there. Alright, so now we have to do some mental calculations here, and these calculations aren't too bad here. Let me just kind of blow this up one more time here. Let's take a look at this bottom expression here. 2 minus 1 is 1, and the square root of 1 is 1, and 1 divided by 1 is just 1. So this entire yellow expression is just 1, right? Let me put a 1 there. And then if I multiply 2 times 2, I get 4. So this would be 4y prime, and then there's a 1 on the left-hand side. And then I can continue on, plus. Okay, so let's take a look at this expression right here. This is 2 minus 1, and there's a 1 on the numerator there. So this whole yellow expression there is just 1. So you don't really need to worry about that part there anymore. I mean, these are just 1s, right? And then all we have to do now is figure out what this is. So 2 squared on the numerator is 4. 4 divided by 2 on the bottom is 2. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. So it'll be 2y prime there. So this whole thing here is just 2y prime. Okay, we're almost done here. 4y prime plus 2y prime is 6y prime, and then I can divide both sides by 6. And my final answer is y prime equals to 1 over 6. All right, there you go, final answer. 2 plus 17.